You've likely heard a lot about Ticketmaster in the last week or so. It's not often that a fairly run-of-the-mill company pisses off the fan base of one of the world's biggest artists and has AOC threatening to break them up. So let's unpack what's happening, why everyone hates Ticketmaster, and if they're right to be angry, or if people just need to calm down. If you like our videos, then be sure to subscribe to get more from TLDR Business. Now, I know you clicked on this video to find out about the bad blood between Taylor Swift and Ticketmaster. But before we get into the Great War, give me 60 seconds to run through some of the background on who Ticketmaster actually are. Ticketmaster are the world's largest ticketing company by some margin, handling sales, distribution, and resale for millions of tickets booked each year. And such is their dominance that the odds are that if you've booked a ticket for any kind of live event, you've either headed straight to Ticketmaster's website or you've been redirected there by an artist. And they're not new to the game either. They've been around for nearly 50 years. And all the way back in the 1970s, they were already building ticketing software before basically anyone else, and then led the way into online self-service ticketing in the 90s and 2000s. Today, though, they make their money by charging artists, venues, and even fans for their services. In fact, when you go to buy a ticket on Ticketmaster, you'll notice a number of fees being sneakily tacked on. Before you pay, your total cost will likely be inflated by a facility charge, which often goes to the venue, a delivery charge, which ostensibly goes towards the shipping of paper tickets and credit card processing fees, and a service fee, which is where Ticketmaster take their cut. So, it sounds like a fairly normal business, right? Ticketmaster act as the ticketing mastermind, contracted in to handle all of the ticket sales. And their scale and expertise allows artists and venues to focus on other elements of the show. That's not an uncommon business model. From the catering of concerts to the marketing of soft drinks, all across the business world, there are specialists who handle tasks to save other companies' effort. So, if this is nothing new, then what's the beef here? Well, the most recent controversy is between Taylor Swift and Ticketmaster. And this scandal is so big that it has a section on Ticketmaster's Wikipedia page and on the wiki page for Taylor's upcoming tour. So you know this is a big deal. Essentially, Taylor's team contracted ticketing out to Ticketmaster for her upcoming Eras tour, her first tour since 2018. As such, demand was always going to be huge, and with a big arena tour like this, there's lots of tickets to sell. So it makes sense that they went to the biggest player in the game. Now, to try and ensure that only legitimate fans got their hands on tickets, and to keep scalpers out of the game, Ticketmaster used their verified fan system for the tour's pre-sale tickets. Essentially, this system uses a number of factors, including previous ticket purchases, the purchase of albums or merch, to verify that not only is the purchaser a real person, but also a genuine fan of the artist. So, millions of fans opted to buy physical copies of Taylor's new album in order to get their hands on one of these verified pre-sale codes. And it really was millions too. 3.5 million people registered for this pre-sale event, of which 1.5 million were granted verified status, while another 2 million were put on a waiting list. Now, that sounds great, but things didn't go amazingly from here. When fans attempted to buy their tickets, they quickly ran into major bugs and delays within Ticketmaster's system. People who'd already jumped through hoops to even get here found themselves waiting in interminable queues before, if they were lucky, being offered very expensive tickets, with many complaining about the massive fees lumped on top of ticket purchases. Now, by the time this pre-sale chaos was over, a reported 2.4 million tickets had been sold. That's the most tickets sold in one day by any artist in history. That's a huge achievement. But remember, this was only supposed to be the pre-sale. And I say supposed to be because there was so much demand that Ticketmaster subsequently announced that they cancelled the general sale of tickets due to technical issues and, quote, a lack of inventory. Yep, not only have they infuriated people by having to deal with their difficult and buggy process for buying tickets, but they'd also sold out of tickets during the pre-sale. So anyone without a pre-sale code never even got the opportunity to try and buy tickets. Now, Ticketmaster have insisted that this level of demand was just way higher than they'd ever predicted in their wildest dreams. But while demand does seem to be unprecedentedly high for this tour, they really ought to have predicted and prepared for an instance like this. In fact, Swift said that she's not going to make excuses for anyone because we asked them multiple times if they could handle this kind of demand, and they assured us that they could. It's truly amazing that 2.4 million people got tickets, but it really pisses me off that a lot of them feel like they went through several bear attacks to get them. So you might now understand why Taylor Swift and her fans are upset here. Isn't Ticketmaster just taking a lot of the flack unfairly? Sure, they underestimated demand and charged a lot of fees, but the ticket prices are, in the words of Ticketmaster, determined in collaboration with our clients. And at the end of the day, they're not keeping all of those fees. As we outlined, they share those with other groups like venues, promoters, and even the artists. In fact, when in front of Congress, Ticketmaster's former CEO said as much.
When people hear what Ticketmaster's service charge is, Ticketmaster was set up as a system where they took the heat for everybody. In that service charge are the credit card fees, the rebates to the buildings, rebates sometimes to artists, sometimes rebates to promoters. So Ticketmaster's been we're like the IRS. We deliver bad news.
But before you start feeling sorry for Ticketmaster, let's take a look at the true scale of the business, because their power in this game is immense. Firstly, loads of the world's largest venues have exclusive contracts with Ticketmaster, prohibiting the sale of tickets through any other outlet. In fact, the company controls ticketing at a staggering 70% of major concert venues. So if an artist wanted to do a tour without Ticketmaster, that would mean a lot of venues getting skipped. And it's not just contracts they hold with venues, because they also own and operate a load of venues around the world too. Since their merger with Live Nation in 2010, Ticketmaster has been owned by the new Live Nation Entertainment Inc. Together, Ticketmaster not only has its client venues, but Live Nation own and operate a whole load more, with them allegedly strong-arming venues into using Ticketmaster's services, something that the company denies. And this means that there's not really that much competition in the ticket-selling business. There are a handful of other sites who do sell tickets, but with them locked out of the vast majority of major venues, they are unable to scale anywhere near as big as Ticketmaster. So when someone like Swift is looking for a ticket vendor to sell millions of tickets and handle this kind of stress test, no one else possibly has the scale of Ticketmaster, leaving them as essentially her only choice. Not only do they control venues and the ticketing system though, Live Nation also has a subsidiary called Artist Nation, who have historically signed massive deals with artists like Madonna, U2, Jay-Z, and Shakira. So this leverage is immense. Not only are Ticketmaster the only viable company in the market, as they're the only ones who are able to build enough scale, but they also control the venues and in some instances the artists too, giving tours very little choice but running through them. And when you know all of this, those fees that I mentioned earlier begin to look a little shadier. In a study published by the US government's Accountability Office, in 2018 they found that fees add on average 27% to a ticket price, with advocacy group More Perfect Union saying that today those numbers run as high as 48% of ticket prices, nearly doubling the total cost. One fairly random example referenced in the GAO's report examines those looking to attend a Guns N' Roses tour, who would see an extra $50 added to their ticket price, of which $19.50 went towards mailing the ticket to them, which seems a little inflated to me. $4 went towards a facility charge set by the venue, but owned by Live Nation. $4.25 was a processing fee shared between the ticket seller and the client, in this instance Ticketmaster and Live Nation, and a service fee of $23, which just went straight to Ticketmaster. Now, this might be a very specific example, but it's not at all rare. In fact, this total control of the chain has given Live Nation Entertainment Inc. immense power. Power they've been accused of abusing all the way back to the 1990s, when Pearl Jam testified in Congress against them. More recently, though, the US Department of Justice ruled against them in 2019, finding that the company had leveraged this stack of power to push venues into using Ticketmaster, a clear violation of the consent decree that they signed in 2010 as part of the merger. As a result, the DOJ extended the decree until 2025 and made the language in the agreement even more explicit. But despite this, advocacy groups still insist that Live Nation regularly engages in these kinds of practices. Unsurprisingly then, attorney generals in both North Carolina and Tennessee are investigating the company. And they've also received a warning from the head of the Senate Subcommittee on Competition Policy, Antitrust, and Consumer Rights in relation to this latest Taylor Swift drama. Add to that, Representative Alexander Ocasio-Cortez, who's no lover of big business at the best of times, tweeted that Ticketmaster was a monopoly and ought to be broken up. Now, Live Nation have pushed back against all of these claims. Liberty Media's CEO, that's the company who own Live Nation Entertainment Inc., who in turn own Ticketmaster, insisted that the company was competitive. He even remarked that Taylor's tour were represented by their biggest competition, AEG, who in turn have their own ticketing service that they opted not to use. Because in his words, we are in reality the biggest and most effective ticket seller in the world. But AEG dispute this, with a spokesperson telling the Washington Post that they didn't have a choice in the matter, saying that Ticketmaster's exclusive deals with the vast majority of venues on the Eras tour required us to ticket through their system. So it seems that yet again, Live Nation Entertainment Inc.'s control of the industry is making things very uncompetitive. So what happens from here then? Well, the government could intervene. They do have the power to roll back the merger and reduce the power that the combined companies have. Power that even in 2010, many knew all too well that they try to leverage for their advantage. Artists could also try harder not to cooperate with Ticketmaster. They might seem like a ticket mafia, but artists with the clout of Swift could at least attempt to avoid them. They'd have to be pretty fearless, and they'd absolutely lose money by doing so. But Swift did make a rather ominous remark, saying that we've been doing this for decades together, and over the years, I've brought so many elements of my career in-house. I've done this specifically to improve the quality of my fans' experience. It's really difficult for me to trust an outside entity with these relationships and loyalties, and it's excruciating for me to watch these mistakes happen with no recourse. It seems then that Taylor isn't just going to tolerate it, but it doesn't seem like she has that much choice. She could push back, but the real issue here is infrastructure. In the 80s and 90s, Ticketmaster's competitive advantage was their technology, but today their edge is their contracts and their deals. So for a real competitor to emerge, either these venues need to ditch their lucrative multi-year Live Nation deals, which often even involve Live Nation fully operating their venues on their behalf, or a new competitor would need to build entirely new arenas, theaters, and venues. What I'm saying is that the barrier for entry here is huge, even for a megastar like Swift. So without government intervention, it looks like everyone's just going to continue hating Ticketmaster. If you want more from TLDR Business, then be sure to subscribe to the channel and ring the bell. That way you can get more videos like this from us, and you'll get us ever closer to 100,000 subscribers. Thank you for your support.